Today I want to talk about grief and addiction. I'm going to take my glasses off because that's a bit bright. I'm get a little bit comfortable. So, you might be wondering how grief and addiction are related. Well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a model I use to deal with both, to understand them both. And hopefully it'll all become clear. So, I've dealt with both grief and addiction. Let's start with grief. I've lost family members, friends. So, and during a particular difficult one of them, I heard about this model and it really helped me understand what I was feeling. I was finding it very difficult because I felt like I was always feeling this very strong, intense emotion, and I just did not know what to do with it. I mean, oh my God, it floored me. I mean, people feel grief in very different ways, and in fact, the same person, sometimes they can feel absolute elation and then absolute being floored, all like back to back. And that's certainly what I experienced. But I learned about this model that helped. And it goes a bit like this. If we imagine a box, now I can't draw a box here, I haven't got the technical skill. IT engineer, can't draw a flipping box. I'll learn one day and I'll draw you the box, alright? But for now, just imagine this box. And inside the box there's a button. And every time this button is pressed, you feel a flood of them. It just opens the floodgates and out comes all of this grief that you've been keeping inside, and every time that button is pressed it always feels just as strong. And you might be thinking, what? How are we going to press the button, Matt? Because the button's on the inside of the box. You can press the box on the inside unless Schrodinger's cat's in there or something. But no, inside there is not a cat, and it definitely is in there. We know it's in there. It's a ball, and this ball is massive at the beginning. It's so big, it's bursting the box at the seams, and it's always slamming that button. So everything you see, everything, like you talk to your family and boom, that button is being pressed, and you make a cup of tea and boom, I used to make this person a cup of tea, and you eat a egg custard and oh my God, the emotions flow, you know. But that ball, it's an inflatable ball, and air is being released from it, so that ball is getting smaller and smaller. So those really strong emotions that you feel at the start of grief, you start feeling them less often. So that ball is now, it's just a little bit smaller than the box, and it can move around a little bit, but it's still quite frequently actually, maybe every couple of hours, it's still pressing that button. And every time that button is pressed, the feeling is still just as strong, still absolutely knocking you down off your feet each time. But again, more time passes and the ball gets smaller, and now the ball can move around that box a little bit, and maybe just every few days or every couple of weeks it's boom and hitting that button. And again, when that button is pressed, floodgates open, emotion pours out. It's still just the same, exactly the same strength of emotion. And well, don't beat yourself up for this, by the way. When that's very important. When the frequency of that button getting pressed gets lower, you are still feeling that same level of emotion. You still love that person just as much. You know, you're not forgetting that person. They're still right there with you, and that emotion is still just as strong every single time. And the sad thing is, it always will be, but that's also a happy thing, because you're remembering that person, you're remembering the impact they had on your life. And that's exactly what that person wants. They don't want you pushing that button 24 hours a day. Oh my God, woe is me, this person is gone. They want you to get on with your life and do the things that you want to do, and they want to see you happy. They don't want to see you in an emotional wreck 24/7. They want that button to be pressed less frequently. And again, more time passes and that ball gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's zooming around that box, and it's very rarely hitting that button. But inevitably that button is going to be pressed, and there are going to be things that set off those emotions, and you may be able to foresee that, but you may not be. It may be something completely random. Maybe an egg custard. And there are two takeaways here. You are always going to feel that emotion. I always feel that emotion right here. It gets me every single time. And it gets me just as strong, and it'll get you just as strong. But the frequency, as time goes along, the frequency will get lower. And also, there is a second takeaway. You're going to build better ways of dealing with that emotion. You're going to, maybe when you feel that emotion, you look up at the sky and remind yourself of happy times you had, and that will bring you back up to that elated feeling, or something else. How you deal with that is entirely up to you, but you will build these coping mechanisms. So the button will be pressed less frequently, and each time you press it, you'll make a better plan of what to do. Now, I was at dinner with two lovely ladies the other week. A lady I work with and her daughter. Thank you for buying me dinner, by the way. Fantastic steak. Recommend it to anybody. And the conversation was just as good, because while we were talking, I was asked the question, how am I dealing with the addiction? So I haven't mentioned yet, I gave up smoking a few months ago, and I've dealt with other addiction in the past too, and it's really flipping hard, you know. And when they ask me this question, what's it like dealing with addiction? Does it get any easier? I couldn't say yes. No, I was looking out the window, I was watching people smoking, and I really wanted a cigarette, and I want a cigarette in that moment as much as I wanted a cigarette the day I gave up. But I realised, and this is how I explained it to them, I used the box and ball grief model. I said, my button, every time that button is pressed, I still want that thing just as much. I've dealt with other addiction too, and it's exactly the same. It doesn't matter how long the time is, every time that button is pressed, I always need the thing just as much. But exactly the same with grief. The time between that button being pressed, the amount of space in that box for that ball to whiz around, the space gets bigger, the frequency of the button being pressed gets smaller. And every time that button is pressed, I build better coping mechanisms. And you will too. It doesn't matter what you're going through right now, whether it's grief or addiction. And there may be other things this model applies to that I haven't thought about yet, but particularly, tell me in the comments if there are. But particularly with grief and addiction, it is going to get easier. The feelings will always be the same, they'll always be as strong, but they will become less frequent, and you will build better ways to deal with them. So, I don't know why I wanted to talk about that today, but I guess it's a bit of self-reflection. I guess it's a little bit wanting to share a positive way of dealing with something negative. And kind of in the hope that if you're struggling with the same things I am, that in the future you can pass this on as well, and you can help somebody else, because I mean that's what it's about, isn't it? let's wrap up a little bit. Sorry about the video quality. Trying a different setup today. Obviously, it's not so great. I'll try the same one again different one again next week. Also, I've got a microphone. Didn't work out so well, so sorry about that. But hopefully, we'll get something a bit less deep to talk about next week. Got about 20 views on my boat rant last week. It's yeah, I don't know why I made that my first one. I just kind of got started, and so yeah, let's hope there's a better thing next week. If you got any ideas or what you want me to talk about, I'll talk about anything. I like to talk, so I guess I'll see you next time.